I'm Marcus Mabusela, and I am with my right hand, my producer, Juliet Kamanga. And today we're talking to a filmmaker whose goal is to create social change through the arts.
You look at, for example, government entities that we're working with. They have said, okay guys, we see your industry, where are the private investors? Where are they for them to come in? And I just think even with our governmental structures, we need to create structures that can empower filmmakers. Because I always say, you cannot continuously say that the challenge is the funding, but the structures around that is challenging. You want, for example, for me to prove that my investment is there. Okay, cool. I do my application. I'm going to prove that my investment is there. You take 6 months to respond back. Investor's gone. Do you understand those structures? So then it goes back to the sense of, but you're not proving, but it's also got to do with, we need to hold accountable the agencies that are meant to serve us, to look at the communication, the administration, their time around to say, how do we work together? If you're saying, because filmmaking is very different.
Please subscribe, like, comment, and turn on the notification button so you are aware of our future episodes that you will love so much. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce Miss Ayanda Sibisi. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank
you
you so much,
Marcus. A little intro about myself. It's always very hard to do an intro about myself because I'm like, oh, what do I do? So I am Ayanda Sibisi, born, raised in Johannesburg. I do like to say I originate from KwaZulu-Natal because most of my family as well established around that side. I think my career started when I was in high school. I literally went to the National School of the Arts where I got to do theatre for 5 years, understand and love performance, the idea of arts, understanding music. Ballet on the other hand, there was just a lot. It was a great platform and space to get to do academics as well as fully still pursue the art. And then later went to Wits when I just decided, actually, this is what I want to pursue, fully going to art. I then did a honors degree, good 4 years at Wits, studying film and television. I did major. What did I major in? I think the stuff I majored in was actually not even what I am currently doing. I then later got into the film industry where I got to understand and learn because my passion was like, oh, I just want to create films. I want to be on set. I then later moved to Business and Arts South Africa, where as a part of a program called the Debut Program. It's a partnership between BASA as well as the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture. The whole program basically centers around entrepreneurship, but creative entrepreneurship, where basically we get at least, if I'm correct, it was about 50 individuals, specifically creatives, whether you're a musician, whether you're a DJ, whether you're a dancer, whether you're a crafter, etc. And basically teach them lucrative business skills. How do you make money out of your craft? From there, basically a couple of them get selected and one per province. And through each different phase, they would get like funding through that, and they'll go through like workshops where it's centered around understanding, for example, how to develop business skills, financial plans. We'll bring in, for example, individuals who've got like legislative ideas to understand contracts, agreements. And then from there, then got approached by the IPO to run a program which was basically centered around young producers emerging and jumping onto set, where they were mentored by a couple of IPO producers. And from there, got to understand the bigger picture of the filmmaking industry. And I always say it's more towards the business side. What are the roles? Like, what happens? How do you get the funding? How do you secure that? How do we create sort of a viable structure for filmmakers? And this is where I am.
Wonderful, man. Wonderful. But being a young person in such a huge role must be pretty daunting, It's not just for anyone, but what's the importance for you, what's the importance of seeing more and more young people within such spaces?
I think firstly, it is a huge privilege to be in the role that I'm in. And it's also a privilege to work with well-established producers who have over 30 years of experience in the game of filmmaking, producers who have really created great work both locally and internationally, who understand the idea of producing, who understand the idea of financing. It's also a great opportunity to get to work with different stakeholders, government, private sectors, your streamers, your commissions, so it is a great space because more than anything, I think I realize every day to be like, oh, there is a lack of young emerging, specifically producers who are not in this role, or they are young producers but they do not know, for example, what route to then take. And I do hope that in my role, that is something that I'm able to also create. And more than anything, even with the established producers, there's still a lot of challenges. So learning from them and also understanding what their difficulties and challenges are, and seeing how I can perhaps lobby on their behalf to the stakeholders, to, for example, the government institutes, it's a challenging role, but I think every day is literally a lesson, because I think the industry is generally changing every day. You look at technology, you look at AI, there's a lot of changes in the industry. And currently, I do think we're at a point where everything is happening so quickly. Economics are happening so quickly. You look at technology, the way we intake, for example, filmmaking is no longer the same as we used to 20 years ago. The way we create films is not the same way. The way the audience consume films is also very different in the current present moment, I guess.
Yeah, funny. Today I was reading an article. They were talking about how the phase of the Marvel pictures is gone, right? Superheroes, and just a few years ago we were complaining that we're not getting enough original stories in. So it just goes to show it's a dynamic space. But how do you kind of get a grip? Because I know it gets too much. There's so much happening all the time. When do you actually find time to ground your feet and get a sense of where you are? Do you have your own time and space? I know when you were doing more performance, maybe you do more of those practices, but how does Ayanda just find her grounding?
It does get exhausting, but I think it's also when you do have a passion to always want to create sort of more. And I think you spoke about it earlier, and I think I always say, like, I'm a big advocate for social change, and I do think that the arts creates that, specifically film creates that. So how do I find a grip? I do take pauses in my life. I really fully believe in pauses. I do believe I'm in a generation where I feel like it is okay to say you're not okay. It's okay. Like, I believe in a traffic light. Like, to say I'm an orange today, where no, or I'm a red no-go zone area, or I'm a green, because I do think as human beings, there's a lot happening. But the dynamics of taking a pause, it doesn't mean you're not going to get to where you are. It's just taking a breather. So do that, and then start again. Also, don't be afraid to fail. I always say to people, it's okay to do something, because if you're not going to do it, or you're not going to put in the effort of actually trying to create something, you're never going to know the outcomes of it. And even if you do create something, you may start it and it may not get to where you would like it to get to, or specifically within the progress that you've put for yourself, but that doesn't mean it's not going to get there. I always say I will always be a risk taker, because if I don't take those risks, then I never know, and I'll always be in the same place.
So true. But now, to our audience members who might not know who the IPO is, could you just give us a quick breakdown of who is the IPO? What do you guys do? What is the mandate? Who are your subcommittees? And what is it all about?
This is the part where I wish I could literally just read it off the website.
There's a website, guys.
Because I feel like it's more detailed. But basically, the IPO is an organization that basically stands for promoting as well as protecting the rights and interest of producers, as well as the whole value chain. Because basically, without, for example, the producers, without the crew, then you don't have the producer. Without the crew, it's a vice versa. So what we do is basically lobby on behalf of producers. We are a membership organization that's really centered around getting individual members, getting producer members, getting affiliate members, getting associate members, and also looking at different, for example, streamers, etc., as well as commission entities, to see how we can build relations with them. And ideally what we do is we try and create a lucrative sort of environment for producers. As you may know, like, producing is not just about creating the work. It's about where do I get the financial capital to create the film, you know? So it's a space where we basically talk about those issues, those challenges, if there are any issues with entities that we are going to, that basically provide financial capital to create a film. We come in there, for example, we try and have a lot of relations as well with all of the film commissions, your KZN film commissions, your NAVFs, basically creating some sort of a relation with them, an MOU, for example, to say how can we assist or how can we work together to create some sort of a partnership, because as you know, the NAVF, for example, is one of the biggest agencies for the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, and it's all about basically creating finance, creating some sort of a space for filmmakers who are looking, for example, for capital or a grant. So what we do is kind of have relations with those so that they understand where we are as filmmakers or as producers and what that looks like. We also do lobby on behalf of producers for different sort of sectors. You know, we don't just also, it's not always about the capital, but it's also some of the challenges that producers may be facing. As you may know, for example, one of the biggest challenges was the DTIC rebate. What we do is basically come in to see how can we have a dialogue, for example, with the DTIC. You know, we always try and create awareness, and what we are trying to create is basically a structural value chain right across the film industry. We do work with partners such as the IBFC, SASFED, which is basically the umbrella body for all of the little other organizations that are similar to the IPO, such as your Saga, such as your IBFC, such as your Writers Guild, you know, similar in that it's basically hubbing and housing producers' interest and seeing how we can create some sort of a legislation, or rather a lucrative environment for ourselves. As you know, filmmaking is not the same as other industries where, for example, they've got clear regulations, what labor laws looks like for them, but we're hoping we can create those kind of, an environment or an organization that can create that. Because, I mean, filmmaking is more of a stop and start. Today you've got a gig because you're a freelancer, tomorrow you don't. There are challenges on set. How do we then come in to not only just lobby on behalf of the producer, but also to ensure that there is the rights, for example, of the crew are protected.
Interesting. I remember a few months ago there was conversations around consolidating all the producer bodies and creating one. And I mean, to my knowledge, the IPO was the only one I knew. And I know there was one at DFM, one of the organizations, I think it's the Black Producers Organization or something like that.
IBFC,
IBFC.
Independent Black Filmmakers Collective.
So how does it work? How do these bodies work independently? And what is the whole plan with consolidating them? And is that plan still underway?
So my time at the IPO has really just been about creating relations with those sister bodies. I call them sister bodies because I look at the IPO and I look at, for example, an entity like the IBFC. There isn't much indifferent. It's just about a filmmaker or producer deciding on which one particularly will represent them or has their best interest, you know. But there is a great relation with that. I know, for example, there's a lot of dialogue that we've had with DFA, with Writers Guild, you know. We are also trying to see what partnerships we can potentially create. Because as I continue to say that the industry and how filmmaking was done is very different now. So if we can look at some sort of an MOU between us as entities to see how we can intertwine, it doesn't only have to be the producer organizations, but we look at the directors, we look at the writers, you know. There's a couple of writers who do write to the IPO trying to approach to say, hey, can we connect them with a particular producer? They've got a script, they've got this. So we are hoping to see if we can create actually programs that can develop, and let's see what programs we can do, because the whole purpose as well of the industry or our organization is to upskill. And more than anything, we are also trying to ensure that emerging filmmakers are coming in as well. Emerging filmmakers have a voice. So I know you asked me earlier about the subcommittees. Yeah. We have different subcommittees. So for example, we'll have a subcommittee that strictly will deal with the film commissions, you know, and you'll have a deputy for the subcommittee. You'll have a chair, deputy as well as the chair for the subcommittee. They basically, if you're interested and you've got knowledge in that, basically you'll be part of that subcommittee. Discussions around what is happening with the commissions, how commissions are working currently with film producers. Those are the discussions that happen in those subcommittees. We'll try and create those relations. We try and reach out on behalf of producers because, I mean, you can't get, I can only imagine NAVF wanting to get 100 emails from different filmmakers, whereas we can all consolidate that email and send it on behalf of producers. There's also a subcommittee for NEF, DTIC, as well as the investment sort of institutions or entities. We also have a communication subcommittee. We've got a membership subcommittee also trying to look at ways on how we grow our membership. How do we then create a great membership base? What are members looking for? Because nobody wants to be a part of an organization without some sort of a leverage or benefit. You know, people want their voices to be heard. Basically, we stand for that. You can send an email and say, these are my challenges that I'm having. For example, you can send an email to say, these are my challenges that I'm experiencing with my funding or my grant with a particular commission. We'll come in to say, how can we help? How do we create a relation? And how do we have a conversation or a dialogue with these film commissions so that we can find some sort of a way, you know? So ideally, mainly those are subcommittees. And obviously, depending on the year of the executive board, there are slightly changes. But I do say that the IPO is a growing organization. It is growing. A lot of, for example, the members that are on there are members who are well experienced with great knowledge as well, trying to create viability more than anything for our industry. You know, so that's more than anything. We need to create a viable industry, whether it's locally, whether it's internationally. And I do think one of our biggest things, even last year at MIP Africa, we did like was it an MOU with the Canadian, you know, trying to create treaties to see how we can create those relations. How do you then get, for example, a co-production between South Africa as well as a Canadian producer, South Africa with Brazil? You know, those are the things that we also come in to see how our filmmakers or producers can actually leverage off the resources.
Okay, interesting. I mean, now touching on the subcommittees, I must be honest, I think it's this morning. I was busy with my application as one of the subcommittee members. But I think I chose a subcommittee that I don't really understand too well, which was communications. So I need to just reverse and re-look at that, and I hope there's a way for me to kind of, you know, rework that, because I figured maybe there might be a whole bunch of young guys, obviously, who are doing the transformation, because you got the wonderful Wandile Molebati who's chairing that one, and I know also my good friend Slu. He's wanted to join the subcommittee of all the investment kind of organizations. So I thought, okay, let me try something different, but maybe I need to sit down and you'll assist me with that process.
No problem.
But yeah, man, I mean, tell me, you know, I mean, you represent producers on many boards, like the SOS Coalition and the likes, you know. What has this achieved so far? What are some of the tangible milestones that you can look at and say, we did this?
So to be precise, we're more of so we've got representatives on the SOS Coalition. SOS Coalition is more of like, they basically reserve the rights of public broadcasting. You know, you look at, for example, the SABC right now. So they ensure, for example, working with ICASA to ensure that content is regulated. So that's one of, for example, our partner organizations that we also work with is, for example, what are the other ones? There's quite a lot, because basically one thing is always going to affect the next. You know, we do have some producers, for example, who are still working, for example, with the public broadcasters. Yeah. You know, as much as we'll do that, we also still sit on there to ensure that content is still there. How do we then navigate for producers who still want to, for example, work specifically with the public broadcasters, with your Netflixes, for example, with your commissions? You know, if there's any changes in any of the regulations, or if there's any changes in any of the agreements, and for example, if that does have an effect on producers, that's where we do come in. You know, we also have some of our members specifically within the executive board sitting on different entities, such as sitting on the DSAC, Department of Sports and Arts and Culture sort of, I don't even know if I can call it a hub, but they've got their own working group. And we always have representatives who can also feed back, because ideally the whole notion of that is to get a lot of representatives who are well-skilled or well-versed specifically in a particular area to sit and understand if there are any changes, if there are any effects that may affect producers, or if there's any sort of a positive change that could also be a great thing for producers, to kind of always communicate that to our producer members.
That's powerful, man. Really, really. I mean, when one considers, the traction in which you guys have gained, you'd really get to understand how much work you guys are doing. But what else do you aim to achieve in your personal capacity as a professional?
If you probably asked me that question last year, I'd probably be like, every day when I wake up, I just want to create films. But I think on a daily basis, you plan for something and it goes in a completely different direction, but that doesn't mean that's not the direction you need to take. It just means it's challenging you in your everyday sort of life. So definitely I still want to create and produce work. Probably my funders are just like, but you still haven't submitted your stuff. But I'm like, I will do that.
Yeah.
So I'm still definitely creating that, wanting to create films. But more than anything, I do think I really enjoy the idea of creating some sort of a viability within our industry. They're young producers, they're established producers who still have challenges. Our industry is not an industry, for example, that has, I've worked for 60 years or I've worked for 50 years. I'm taking pension. I know I've got a particular package I'm waiting for. Unfortunately, it's not that. It's an industry that's got to stop and start. 1 minute you're working for 3 months, the next you're sitting home for a month, and you need to find a way in how that 3 month sort of salary is going to sustain you even over the next few months. So in my personal capacity, more than anything, is still being a part of entities and trying to be the voice specifically that can assist to create a more viable industry. And don't get me wrong, I always say, you look at filmmaking and you think, but filmmaking is actually one of the industries in South Africa that really contributes a lot towards the GDP. We compete just as much as the automobile industry. You look at COVID, you look at the stats on how many production houses employed just on one particular production, just on one set, in a short space of time. The job employment that is created from different avenues. And I don't just speak about just the filmmaking crew, but I speak about we contribute towards transportation. Hospitality, to shoot something, you need to book that. We contribute. You look at the caterers, we're providing that service. You look at every other sort of industry that provides a service to the filmmaking industry, and you look at the amount of money that is being spent. There was even a case study and just looking at how many jobs were created in COVID by the filmmaking industry. You look at that, but you look at the downfall of the fact that there isn't some sort of a fixed sort of legislations or fixed laws that can protect not just the producers, but also protect the crew and the holistic value chain in the film industry. So I do hope that it's one of the things that we can sit down and see government with us, private sector, to see how we can work together to create that, because it's one of those things where I always say I'm like the industry that we're in really, in terms of the capital, yes, we can generate. In terms of the employment, we really can generate. As much as we can look at it and say, no, there isn't enough funding. I always disagree. And I say, I don't think that the challenge is funding. I think it's the arrangement that we have with the institutions that are responsible for the funding.
That's true.
That's what I think it is.
For the past 4 years, I've been walking a personal journey of trying to build a fund, because one of my mentors told me, he's from the US. He told me how he started a fund. He got an old lady who was part of the NY Stock Exchange, and she put money into a pot, and he started producing these films. And now he's here in South Africa, and he's producing film and series. And I was like, man, that's something I really want to replicate. But I found that there are interested investors, that people who are running funds, hedge funds who are managing, who are saying, we don't understand this business, but we love it. The problem is, it's very hard to prove ROI to these investors, and for them that is really what
Yes.
matters. And as soon as you say, well, we've got assistance from this government agency, as soon as you go to that government agency, they disappoint you, you know? So it's very difficult for us to prove a sustainable business model for investors in this space. What do you think needs to change for this thing to turn around?
So look, you look at, for example, government entities that we're working with. They have said, okay, guys, we see your industry. Where are the private investors? Where are they for them to come in? And I just think even with our governmental structures, we need to create structures that can empower filmmakers. Because I always say, you cannot continuously say that the challenge is the funding, but the structures around that is challenging. You know, you want, for example, for me to prove that my investment is there. Okay, cool. I do my application. I'm going to prove that my investment is there. You take 6 months to respond back. Investor's gone.
Yeah.
Do you understand those structures? So then it goes back to the sense of, but you're not proving, but it's also got to do with, we need to hold accountable the agencies that are meant to service, to look at the communication, the administration, their time around to say, how do we work together? If you're saying, because filmmaking is very different, you know, we really depend on everything, but if I'm saying I'm shooting at this particular point, it means it needs to be shot at that particular point. If I'm getting an investor, it means I need to know that there is money that is going to come in to pay back my investor. Once I do not get that money that has been promised, or whether it's in a form of a rebate, in any sense, you know, you do understand the interest that is being generated. From that interest, it's like, how do I then pay that back? And how do I go back to my investor to explain that the money that I needed to get, for example, from a rebate still has not kicked in? You know, it's those sort of challenges. And I always say, and I repeat, I don't think it's a funding problem, but it's just creating models that can be fundamentally viable. And the only way to create that is to also understand the process of filmmaking. Because if you do not understand the process of filmmaking, then you won't understand that whatever legislations or whatever sort of practices you may put may not work. Because you could set out a practice to say, okay, this is what needs to happen, but it doesn't work like that in filmmaking. You need to understand what goes into filmmaking to understand what that is.
Yeah.
And look, I'm probably very optimistic about it. I do think that generally we still have hope. I mean, you look at the amount of brilliant films that get created in South Africa, you know, and you look at those and you look at them competing with the international market, you know. So it's really just about trying to see how do we then bring in the private as well as the government institutions to see that, because it is a valuable industry, you know, creating employment, generating capital in the economy. So it's really just about that. Because I always say, I'm like, South African producers are brilliant. Like, the work that we watch is so brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, just understanding the fact that we literally competing. And I mean, you look at also your international producers wanting to come in here, wanting to do co-productions, wanting to come and film this side, you know. So how do we then create that? How do we create servicing? How do we generate that? And to generate that, we need to sort of create some sort of a structure that can be lucrative, you know, because no investor really wants to come to South Africa if it's not a good sort of a deal for them.
That's true. That's true. I mean, you touched on something, servicing, and that's something that has been a huge money spinner for us. Great money, you know, source of income for us as an economy, as a country. But it seems like as of late, there is less and less servicing of international films. Why is that?
I mean, last year, September, the DTIC did decide or release their new guidelines, which basically cut down the rebate. And I mean, it's hard to really convince investors to come for a rebate of 25 million, you know? So that's the issue. And, you know, you look at, for example, the competition that South African producers have to compete with, you know, whereas those, for example, filmmakers would potentially go film somewhere else, you know? I think, you know, you look at Namibia, I think Namibia is an upgrowing sort of country as well in that. So a lot of them, for example, are going to other countries that is more beneficial for them, specifically from an economic perspective, as opposed to filming in South Africa. And I mean, we've got brilliant landscape. Like, it's beautiful. Like, you can literally decide where you want to shoot. You want a city, you'll get it in Johannesburg. You want some sort of a safari, whatever, you will get it in Mpumalanga or Limpopo. If you want to shoot in an ocean, you'll get it in Cape Town. You go to Durban, there's a lot of dynamic landscapes in South Africa, but the issue is there's no investor that's really going to come.
But I mean, come on, Ayanda, let's be honest. 50 million rands is only 2.5 million US or so, right? And now I know these American studios have huge budgets.
Yeah.
Huge budgets. So, I'm not really sure if the slashing of that rebate was that important to them in the first place. Because I've spoken to some companies down in Cape Town, and they were like, the studios don't even care about that money. They don't even want to deal with the government. What they care about is the fact that we have, cheap labor here. We've got great views, and we've got skilled labor, and that's what they want to exploit. But, so I'm wondering if the argument to say the slashing of the DTI rebate is the real reason why there is a bit of a shortage of these companies coming.
I wouldn't say, because I think the international producers or filmmakers can speak for themselves. But you've just touched on, for example, cheap labor, which is one of the issues, right? We need to look at. And even as the IPO, and I think you spoke about, for example, the transformation subcommittee as well. You look at the broadcast subcommittee, we're also trying to create some sort of a fixed policy document that we can have, because you look at our industry, we don't have policy documents. If we can create that, perhaps maybe you would not get, for example, people in our industry being exploited, people feeling as though it's cheap labor, the idea of even a policy document of an agreement where tomorrow you've got, if anything happens, for example, between a filmmaker or some sort of an agreement or deal that transpires, there's nowhere you're going to go to. Where you're going to go to, what do you call that labor relations place? That most
CCMA.
people, do you see what I'm saying?
That's true. That's true. Funny enough, sorry to interject, we recently were having, we had a legal representative who's part of an MPO called Lawyers for the Arts South Africa. And they're also trying to build their own platform where legal issues and disputes are being settled in a particular sort of like a forum for us as creatives, and I think that's very important. We don't have such, and it's a big travesty. But also just quickly another one I just want to quickly touch on. Obviously now we've just come out recently of our elections. Very scary time. We're not sure what's going to happen. But I'm sure by the time this episode gets aired, there'll be a bit more clarity, with the political landscape. Now, obviously, before the elections, the Copyright Amendments Bill was on the lap of the president, and that had to be halted for a while until we're done with this election process. But as the IPO, where do you stand with regards to the Copyright Amendments Bill, and what implications does this bill have on the rest of the sector?
Thank you for that question, Marcus. I do think generally as the IPO, we have tried to be vocal. From what the talks on the streets have said is the AV sector is very quiet around the Copyright Amendment Bill. Specifically, the musicians have been very open about it, protesting more. Those who are obviously against the signing of it, and I don't think they are fully against it, being passed, but it's just looking at it and being amended, because there are slight implications on there, that we are asking for the president to basically revert back so that we can amend those and let it be signed in its best sort of interest, so that it doesn't have long implications specifically within the industry, whether it's a musician, whether it's for writers, whether it's for film producers. And obviously, as a film producer, IP is one of our biggest key roles. Nobody wants to not own their own sort of property for what they've created, considering the investment that goes into that, the risk that goes into that. So to be okay about a bill where it's risky, because currently it's not at its greatest point, and we are just asking for a few amendments to be revisited. So I must say that we are obviously happy that that bill was not signed, and we are aware that obviously some individuals are pushing for it, which I completely understand, but I think there is a lot of misinformation, specifically right across the industry around it, because you've got the copyright amendment bill, then you've got the performers bill as well, where separately, they used to be separate, but I do think hopefully that there will be some sort of an open dialogue for those changes to be amended. But I do know that specifically if the bill does get signed, there will be a lot of implications specifically for producers, specifically on the IP notion, Yeah.
Very scary, man. I mean, if you don't have IP, what do you have?
Yeah.
Essentially, because that's a real.
That's your trademark,
That's
basically. That
That's
is
it.
that is our, what do you call it? And people are like, that is my trademark or whatever, because people create work so that from that work, that's how they generate an income.
No, I mean, we live in an ever-changing space, extremely dynamic, and it's constantly changing. Now, now the screen is actually showing Kiniko, and the closure of many cinemas. They've just been bought over by a multinational, and they're seeing that the cinema space is not viable anymore. Even the streamers are cutting down budgets. We're going more towards AVOD, advertising video on demand.
Yes.
And there's different types of, so it's a forever changing space. And I think for people who are driven by adapting to changing tides, it's a very interesting and it's never boring. But for you, 10 years down the line, when you look at this business, where do you think we are actually headed into? With all the takeovers, Canal Plus now was buying over MultiChoice. Someone like your known associates is bought over Moonlighting. Where do you think it's all leading us towards?
So look, I do still believe that there is hope specifically in the South African industry, right across the audiovisual industry as a collective. In the film industry, yes, there are challenges, but if you do look at how long this industry has been around for, the industry has been around for a very long time. You look at, for example, Stekeniko. We grew up knowing that Stekeniko is the go-to. But we need to look at, and I think this is not just a filmmaker's sort of point of view, but it's a holistic point of view, because the individuals that worked at Stekeniko are, a everyday you and I, going to work, getting employment. So you can only realize how many job cuts there's going to be from there. You look at just dynamically from that, but we need to look at issues such as, why do we have a drop of individuals watching or going to cinema in South Africa? It's not that the content is not there, because the content is there. We need to look at that. Where exactly are these films going to? Why, for example, is everybody or every producer pushing for the streamers, for example? Why are they going to the commissions? Because obviously, there's a lot of challenges. It's not because some of them, it's not because they want to, but they still have to put bread and butter. So there's a lot that we need to look at. And more than anything, I think my biggest question is, what is going to happen once the cinemas have closed down? What are we going to do about those spaces, You look at, for example, the NAVF. They've got a funding call specifically, or they have, I don't know if it's part of their tier, but they'll have, for example, part of the development production. They've got the festival and marketing. Then I think it falls under the festival and marketing. They literally will give funding for how do you, or an organization, company, create some sort of a public screening, How do you take work to, for example, rural areas, urban areas, because those are the things we need to look at. You look at, for example, 30, 40 years ago, how literally television would be set outside, whether it's in the peri-urban area, it's set outside, you're paying R5 to watch that, and people want to watch films. I always say, I grew up, I loved South African sitcoms. I feel like we really created one of the best sitcoms. You look at now, where's the content of that? Are people not creating sitcoms because the commissions, the streamers are not looking into that? Are people not creating sitcoms because they feel that the audience market is not looking into that, But, you've got to look at it in a completely different way. What is the audience? Where are they right now? What are they comfortable to consuming? Because I always say, I grew up with television. We all grew up with television. We grew up with cinema. And even now, the way we consume cinema, the idea of knowing that you can get home and literally watch, you can just put on your Netflix. You can just put on your...
everything.
It does.
Sure. Someone was saying how, when a film was released, there'd be like a build-up, there'd be like, you'd see posters, and then you'd see a trailer maybe on television or, and then it builds up so much, you can't wait until January the 28th until it drops, But now it's just wham, bam, oh, there's a new film, and I think that kind of also does desensitize us.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on.
I think it's also the challenge of access. We grew up watching your public broadcast, SABC, 1, 2, 3. We grew up watching that.
True.
But you get an audience now saying, it's pointless. There's nothing to watch. Why is that? We need to look at that. Even people are watching and enjoying the streaming, but people are also just like, I already know it's the same things. Like, if it's not this theme, then it's the same sort of thing that is getting produced, I would love to watch sitcoms that are South African made. I think South Africa had the greatest sitcoms. Where are we with those sitcoms, Also, you look at, for example, property that was created, IP that was created years back, where you knew it belonged, for example, to a public broadcasters. Where are they now? There's just a lot because of the landscape and how I don't think we have clear policies that are protecting the interest specifically of a producer, the interest of a creator, as much as we can argue, but it is a business. This is an industry. It is an industry that everyone consumes.
Everyone consumes. I was talking to a producer who's actually a former child star. He was one of the actors in the sitcom Dynamite Deep Kloof Dudes.
Yes.
And I'm like, dude, sometimes I think I so wish that sitcom could be recreated, And he's like, well, it's tough because it's in the hands of the broadcaster. And, an institution like that is not open to say, hey, guys, you know what? It would be good for us to reuse this property in a meaningful way. We don't have such content that's really focused on this demographic, So it's a big problem. We've got archives of great work, but we can't even revisit that, recreate it, reinvent it. It's a huge problem that we have. So it makes sense. You've got a lot of work on your hands, a lot of work in the hands. But overall, man, your production company, you've started it a few years back. What do you still wish to achieve with it? What's it called? And when did you actually start it?
Sure. I actually started that production house. When did I start it? I think when I just decided, I think I was employed and I just quit. And I was just like, actually, this is not for me. Like, I want to create work and I want to employ people. And obviously, that is the time where I was just like, let me start this thing. Let me try and get funding. I'm also very passionate about documentary. That's the only purpose I really was just like, okay, cool. Because I really do enjoy documentaries. More than anything, I just think filmmaking as a collective is an idea for social change. Whether it's a perspective of marketing, whether it's to influence the audience, or whether it's to teach knowledge, because, you watch a film and you're like, oh my gosh, this is what I've learned. Or, oh my gosh, I watch a documentary and you get all of the information, whether it can be in a subjective point of view, but, it's one of those things there's a lot that goes into it. Whether you're going to watch something and it's just to trigger an emotion, I always say that is the most capturing thing, to watch something and trigger somebody's emotions, whether it be in a positive way, whether it be in a negative way. So, where is it going? I still definitely want to create. I'm currently working on a documentary. I hope I finish this documentary because...
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, it's also very based on time. So I don't think if I don't complete it in a particular time frame, it probably would not exist, because it's really got to do with individuals and where they are right now, and I can't afford for them to grow because the challenges will not be the same, because it's using real life characters. So still doing that. I also think it's quite challenging because I'm just like, I try and do 100 things and I'm just like, you don't have time. But I'm like, you do. You've got 24 hours in a day. So I do hope that it can grow more than anything. Create work. And yeah, I really still want to make films because that's something I'm always passionate about, just to create that. So let's see how it goes. And more than anything, I think a friend of mine from varsity, we just came up and one time we were even just talking about a platform because we're like, you look at young emerging filmmakers and graduates coming out of film school. People make stuff, but they never have platforms to showcase it, Thought of that, we're like, okay. She was like, cool, let's go into a platform where we can create it, set up a website, people set it up. If they're happy for us to share it, we share it on a platform, Those are the sort of environments I'm also looking at because you look at, for example, your well-established producers, even them, it's like, there's only that, you can literally count them with one hand to be like, these are your options of where you can take your work. And that's a bit challenging because you're like, the idea of, but that one doesn't work with the agreement or the partnership I want to go with, So it's really challenging. So let's see. I'm hoping maybe in a couple of years we will have spaces or platforms that can potentially hub a whole lot of films for established producers, for emerging producers, because I truly do believe that they are great young individuals who are doing exceptional work, but they just don't have that platform. And most of them, it's like, but do I just take it to YouTube? But it's like, I don't want to take it to YouTube. What do I do? And there isn't also enough information to say, do this, take it to a film festival, or do any sort of a thing. And, also the constant dialogues that I have onto my day-to-day days is more, the issue is also the structure on how the industry is developed. It's like, you've got an idea, you create a film, we give you the funding, cool, then you're sitting. You've employed, but just because I've employed, how do I then make sure that the people I've employed, whether I'm ticking to say from the funder, okay, cool, I've created these many jobs, but after you've employed those 20 people for that 3 months, what happens to them after that? We need to look at more realistic programs or look at more in terms of the people or the individuals who are getting the funding. Are they getting clear support to know what's the next steps? So you look at those funding institutions, for example, who are giving funding, and I'm not saying that funding is misused, but all I'm saying is the fact that even those young emerging film producers will create their work, but they definitely want to get some sort of mentorship. They want to know, once I've created this, where do I take it? I take it to a film festival. How do I go about in doing that? Do you start with the distribution of it first? To say, this is what, let's talk about distribution before you even start shooting the film and you get there. Or even if you've got the funding capital, sometimes it's not sufficient. You get to maybe your episode 6 and you're like, you still have 4 more episodes, but the funds are out. So that's the realistic thing about how do we then teach young upcoming filmmakers, or even filmmakers who've been in the game, to say, this is the structure of getting capital. This is how the role of bringing in investment is. How do you ensure that it's generating and it's not a stop-start of, we're giving you funding, we're ticking the boxes of, this is how much you're receiving, this is how much you've employed, but I'm going to go back next year and I'm still exactly at the same point. I always say, even for example, with internships, like, do the internship, great, but we need to look at more viable, sustainable sort of platforms or structures where you bring in the person, but after that, what's their next step? Because after they're done with that internship for 12 months, what happens? They're going to do another internship? Where they're going to be? Because, it's always this idea of everybody just wants to get internships. No, let's look at skills development. It's a holistic thing, How do we go about in that as well? And I mean, you look at AI right now. It's one of the biggest things, and nobody wants to have that conversation. But we have to have that conversation. Because right now I can be like, I'm not going to get a script writer. AI is going to be there. What is AI also doing to people's property? This is a conversation that we need to have in the film industry. And unfortunately, it is there. It is there. It's not going away. So you can only imagine what the value chain 5 years ago was and how that might be cut. Even in editing, you'll probably be like, I need this many individuals, or just generally, it's cutting down. It's like, nope, AI can do it now. We can cut down. What are we doing about that? How are we looking at that?
Scary times indeed.
Very scary.
Scary times indeed. Any other roles that you'd like to take on as the years go by?
Probably be the first female president of South Africa.
Oh yeah, I see it.
Nah, I'm kidding.
I see it. You know?
No, I'm kidding. But roles I probably want to look at. Look, more than anything, I do think I've been privileged to be blessed with skills of being a leader. Yeah. So I would definitely like to take up more leadership roles, obviously in higher institutions, just to ensure that I also bring the ladder down for those individuals that are coming up, because I think that is the gap that we have. There's a huge gap. I have been privileged that there have been people who have brought the ladder down for me, you know, so I would definitely like to do exactly the same thing. Going into those leadership roles, obviously in well-established entities, I want to definitely be a part of decision-making, policy-making, how that impacts, because I do think that as much as, yes, South Africa's got amazing policies that have been developed, but the implementation is always the issue. So going into those roles is something I am looking into, because more than anything, you know, 30 years into democracy, we're still having exactly the same conversations, which is very problematic. We cannot be having exactly the same dialogue, whereas we know how to do that. But the issue is it happening? No. Is there some sort of a measurement of it? No.
So true. So now we're entering the lighter segment of the show, the game segment. And I'm going to hand it over to Juliet, my trusted producer.
That's for trust. All right, guys, this is very simple. It's just our guest versus the Film Biz Show. Basic. Okay, I hope it's basic. I don't know. Now I'm nervous.
It's basic. Yeah.
I hope it is.
Random things that I put together and hoped for the best. Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
If any question confuses you, just ask me to repeat it.
Okay.
Okay, guys. So first question. On the Real Housewives franchise, the South African one? Yeah. A Savage Beauty actress is a friend of the show. Who is she and who is the friend? And this is on a season 3 iteration of said show. So Real Housewives in South Africa, there's an actress who acts on Savage Beauty who's a friend of the show. Who is it?
The only person I know who acts in Savage Beauty is Rosemary.
Is that the only person you know?
I mean, I watched the whole thing. I really watched Savage Beauty, but
Did you really have that?
I did, guys. I'm
Look,
very
I know.
awful with
Now you're exposing
names.
yourself. Okay,
I'll
Marcus.
try. I'll try.
You know her. That's the only reason I put
I'll
this
try.
question
Okay,
up.
if I do know her, it's a good friend. We're good. Angela Sitole.
Of course. And
Oh.
she's friends with Nikki Lee on
Okay.
season 3 of Real Housewives Johannesburg. So you get the point.
I had no idea. Well done.
I knew you'd get it just because you probably figured I chose Angela.
Well done.
Okay, cool. Next question. Which local South African actor makes the most money? Okay. Is it A, Cindy Dlatu, B, Connie Ferguson, or C, Silo Make Kangube?
C.
C.
Yes.
And you are right.
For real?
Yeah.
For real?
He's
For real.
amazing.
No, but how much is he making?
Oh no, I'm pretty sure he's on USDs, guys. Like,
Nah.
Yeah, he's like-
no, he's good. Like,
So they even listed like Charlize, Trevor, I can't pronounce that other guy's name, but that other famous white dude, and then he's the next one.
Hey, how
No,
much is
not-
he making?
I didn't check the numbers because I didn't want to get sad,
What?
but it's a lot of money.
That's crazy.
I'll send you the article. But yes,
Sheesh.
wait, who did you think it was?
I thought it was Bonka.
Bonko's not even on this list.
but he's just entered the market
Yeah,
recently.
yeah, he did.
I mean,
he's doing
great,
a lot of
but he's
work.
just entered.
Give him like 10 years, we'll see.
Yeah,
We'll
maybe
see
Yeah.
that.
Tuso, I mean, she's doing a lot.
Oh no, Tuso's gone.
She's,
But
Amazing.
we said local
I
right
feel
now.
so lonely when I see it. Like, she's gone. Like, come back, Tuso.
Okay,
We
Chuso,
need
please come to
you.
the show.
Yeah.
Please. Okay, this one, I'm scared now if you know, but okay, we'll see.
Yeah.
Name all 3 Ramapakela siblings of Ben Onion Production.
I'll tell you now. Oh my gosh. How could I forget his name? Oh my gosh, guys, I should be so embarrassed because, wow, I will remember all of their names. Give me a second.
Marcus?
It is.
Okay. Let's help
Name
each other
one.
out.
Okay, yeah,
I
you
know
do.
one.
What kind of point system is this?
Look, man, this is what we
Okay.
call socialism.
All right, sure.
Get her out here.
Okay.
I'll give you one, Katleho.
I knew you were going to get the Katlapa one, and I know Katlapa. What's the other second sister's name? Yo,
You can even give me her nickname.
I don't know their nicknames, but I literally know their names because they you know when you're always looking at a spreadsheet and you're like,
Yes, that's why I put the name and you're a producer. So.
You're cutting a budget.
guys, I'm so bad. Wow.
Okay.
Definitely not Ritabile.
Renilwe.
Ritabile.
There, I'm like, I know there's a Ritabile somewhere
Yes,
there.
yes.
Okay.
Number 3.
I don't know the
Give me
number
one.
3.
Go find it out then.
Yeah, that's
Why are you looking at
the
me?
oldest brother. Ish, my phone had to be off. That's the oldest brother because Katleho knows the guy who used to.
Yes.
Sorry, Marcus, were you trying to use your phone during a game?
No, I was not. I was just stating I had to switch it off.
It is a very typical name. Is that the best way I can say?
Kagiso.
It starts with a T.
With a T.
Yes.
Tabiso.
No.
No, it's not.
Tabang.
No.
Tebogo.
Tabo.
No.
Tips.
Wait, what did you say?
It starts with a T.
Yes.
Come on.
One-
Tempo.
Yes, there you go.
Tepo. I
there you
definitely was not going to get that. I don't
Yeah.
know Tepo.
I needed to see. Anyway, this one should be easy. I
And they're
hope.
doing very well.
They
eh?
are. There they are.
So proud.
No, they are
of
doing
them.
well, but
So
well
proud.
enough that y'all know their names.
You know this industry, Juliet, everybody, we don't know names.
I
You're just
know.
like, oh, that, oh, you're like, oh.
No, I
You
know.
know,
I'm
face-
judging you. I googled this.
Yeah.
Anyway, which famous South African composed music for The Lion King? Obviously, the
Lebo M.
original. Of course. I was going to be worried if no one got this. Okay, last question. What's the name of the new Mzansi Magic show about the Rain Queen?
I'll tell you now.
Can I?
Yeah?
Queen. Ojaji.
Aye, yeah.
Gange.
Do you know who's producing it? Which company?
Yeah, Dumandov.
Aye, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so
Sure.
I have knowledge
Yeah.
there. Okay, so technically Marcus wins.
Hey.
Again. Second one in a row, guys.
Wow, you know what?
No, that's fine.
It's all right.
I believe Marcus is going to win.
He's the one. But
Yeah.
you guys
That's what
did
happens
really
when you're
good.
entrenched in the business.
I think
But-
you should ask more legislative questions.
You-
Maybe then I'll get
Maybe
it
we
right.
should-
And that's
Yeah.
funny, the last episode we did. And even I was struggling to say the words.
Was a legal guy.
But
I'm sure-
next time we have you, because you're going to come back. I got you. Don't stress. All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jules.
Thank you, Juliet.
And now, Ayanda, if you could possibly give some word of advice to any young producer out there who's looking to make sense of these ideas that come to them, that they're so obsessed about, please do. And also, we have a segment called Put Them On. Is there any young filmmaker that you feel is trailblazing and people should know about them now? Please give them a shout out.
Thank you. So my last words that I would say to any young filmmaker, whether an experienced filmmaker or somebody who is probably wanting to learn skills in the filmmaking industry without a tertiary background or any sort of a thing, I would definitely say that believe in your dream. Trust me, this is an industry that is sunny, rainy, winter, all in one. It is also a lucrative industry, or I could say that there is potential of that, as much as there are a lot of challenges, but you can definitely create a lot from this industry. So I would definitely say that it is an industry that I would encourage young people to go into. I would encourage young people to tell stories. And more than anything, I definitely encourage young emerging filmmakers to look at Africa as the next big thing. Because I think we've got so much potentials and so much stories to tell from the African continent in general. A young filmmaker that I definitely put on, Hectic. Don't know, I forgot their surname, but I was on not a podcast, but I had to speak on a panel with Lutando. And when I got there, I thought it was the other cinematography Lutando. And I found out, no, this is the other Lutando. And I was like, okay, sorry. So I think I would definitely put them on. I forgot their surname. I also want to say Natin Lovu, very close friend of mine. I think he's an amazing director.
Yeah, wonderful. Shout out to Nati.
Nati,
Beautiful
like,
soul, man.
No,
Yeah.
like literally
Yeah.
always open to wanting to learn and upskill themselves. So I know in the next 5 years I'm gonna be like, oh, 19 Lovu, I know you're gonna make it.
Definitely. Here's another question. All-time
Yes.
favorite reality TV show that you might, like watching?
Weird enough, I'm actually not too big on reality as much as I've probably worked on reality, but I'm not too big on it. I even myself, I'm just like, how do
was
people always
part of the
believe in me
space?
to be like, come do content for reality.
Yeah.
But again, it pays the bills.
Yeah.
But I don't really have a favorite all-time reality show. I can probably do like I said, sitcoms, guys. That used to be like I think the best sitcom that I can think about. Again, South African. What was my favorite sitcoms actually? There's a sitcom, I forgot what it's called, but Mandla N did it at a very young age. City Sisla.
Oh,
Guys,
yeah.
City
Luke Ross was part of
Sisla
that.
was brilliant.
Yeah, that was the one, right?
Oh, I thought it was just
That was the
phenomenal. There's another sitcom that I also enjoyed, and I think the actor's now a producer, and also one that Tando Tabete was on. I can't remember the names. It's weird that I can't remember. But
Cleaners. They were
yes.
cleaning. That's what Salamina was part of that one.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
I think like those are my all time, because I mean reality was not a big thing at that point in time.
Yeah.
Obviously now reality is obviously
big
building
thing.
a big thing in South Africa. You look at all of the international franchises that are coming in. I think it's called NB. What do they buy that licensing for that?
Yeah.
So it is a big thing. People are enjoying it as well. But yeah, I still a fan of like all time favorite
Interesting.
sitcoms.
Very interesting. Producer that you would like to work with one day?
I would probably, I mean, this is probably a dream, but I mean, I would love to not even like fully produce something, but to work and understand and just be on a set with like a Steven Spielberg. I think he is amazing, you know. And I mean, you look at the work that he's created probably in the 90s. It's still films that you can use for reference right now.
Definitely.
Because just of the way the films are shot, you know, and they're still relevant today, just in terms of a sequencing of what the film looks like. I know specifically I love using old film references. I really enjoy looking at the sequence of how those films are created specifically, you know, because there's just so much to take from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, Ayanda, you know, this is whenever one talks to you, you get a sense that it's just never enough, you know. And as soon as you've left, the real questions start coming to mind. But from the Film Biz Show, the crew, the staff, and everyone, we just want to say thank you for being such an inspiration, such a source of light for us young producers who are looking for alternative voices. You really are spinning the space on its head. People don't know whether they're coming or going because of, you know, how robust your approach to this space is. So I just want to say, you know, thank you, and may your light be you know, even brighter, and may your road be open. We wish you all the best on your journey, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, I really actually hope all the best for the Biz Show. I do definitely think like podcasts are a new thing. And I'm really hoping that a lot of people can jump on, because everybody's always watching a lot of stuff and everybody wants to understand the background knowledge behind the filmmaking industry. So yeah.
Definitely. We've got some big plans, and we really want to solidify our relationship with the IPO. So we hope that we're walking the journey together in the not so distant future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.